Jerry, really, it's been a long time getting you in here. I know you stay busy, okay? Tell me, when I was thinking about Jerry, I never knew your middle name was Grant. Where does that come from?
Scotland. My grandmother was from Scotland.
Okay.
She came over when she was 13 years old on the Carpathia and picked up survivors from the Titanic.
Well, ain't that cool?
So she used to tell me those stories, and I didn't record them. I should have recorded them.
You should have. You lost it.
I lost it. She died unexpectedly. So my background is Scottish, and going on my honeymoon to Scotland.
That is
when
neat.
I get married. So
I'm Scottish,
making plans.
Scottish and German.
So.
And I thought I was more Indian until I'd done I've done the DNA and done all those things, and that's been real interesting. I've learned a lot about people that I didn't know I was kin to. Okay, and first thing I done is we had a young lady that my mom had a half sister she'd never met, and she had a daughter anyway, and she didn't know she had any relatives. Well, I done the ancestry.
Wow.
And she showed up in Charleston. And and we both matched, and she didn't know it. And she came to dinner on the 4th of July, her and her family. And I told her, I said, now the first thing we do with families, we borrow $20. I said, we like to do that.
Yeah, my grandmother's a Scotland Grant, and then on the other side, German, the Altisers. So I've got German, but on my dad's side, she was a Grant, and all my grandchildren are named after her.
That's pretty neat, man. I laugh at us, we're how we are, but there's 6 of us named John Dash, and 6 or 7. But anyway, there's 3 of them on our street. Okay, so we're not creative people. I know my dad talked about you a lot. He really admired.
Well, there's 7 Grants, but the granddaughters their middle names are Grant. My name's Grant.
Ain't that cool?
My son's names, both of them are Grant. So we kept the Grant going.
I like that.
Yeah,
we've that's what my daughter-in-law we talked a lot about that. I said, you got to have a boy. You just keep having them until you have one, so we can call him John.
We didn't have boys.
That's pretty cool. Well, Grant, you're a little flexible there.
Yep, a little flexible.
Yeah,
the girls, they don't mind having the name Grant.
Right. Well, it's pretty neat. It really is. Dad's talking about teaching you in Sunday school.
He did.
He told me. I remember he told me years ago, and was talking.
I knew that would come up.
Yeah.
If you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up.
He talked about that, about teaching you in Sunday school.
That's before you were born.
Yes. Lord, yeah. But there's a lot of interesting stuff there. You graduated, what, 68?
68.
68, class of 68. We just had our reunion, another reunion the other day, and we're having our 50-year reunion next year. We're going to have our 50-year reunion because there wasn't 4 of us there. That was out of the class that I graduated from. And a lot of them out there. I asked them before we had the reunion why a lot of people don't go to reunions. I said, how come you think people don't go to class reunions? I said, most time because they think they're the only ones got fat and old. They don't know that everybody's got fat and old. And then several people came. They said, we come even though we're fat and old, like you said. I said, everybody's aged the same. Ain't like you think it's going to be somebody young there from 68. Everybody's going to be glad to be there.
I can remember 2 things about your dad. One thing is he used to take us on cookouts. And I don't know, I was 8, 9 years old.
Right.
I had never had a hamburger bun.
Right.
My mother and daddy didn't buy hamburger buns. The hamburgers were on light bread. So your dad gave me my first hamburger bun, and I remember we were pitching horseshoes, and one of them went in the lake, and your dad didn't want to lose his horseshoe, and he went and got it out. Came out, and his wallet's dripping wet. Good times.
Yeah.
We had good times.
I can remember as a boy, growing up, and we'd done things that, you're thinking now, we would go up there and go swimming up at Berwyn Lake as a boy. And, the dock was on those barrels then. The whole dock was on barrels, 55-gallon drums, and it floated and walked, as you know. We would go up there and go swimming at night, buck naked. My dad take me, I was a little boy. And I'd be up there jumping off that dock in the lake, swimming. And we had I don't know if you ever remembered Sonny Ploss.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Sonny Ploss
rode that horse.
Blind,
rode that horse.
Blind, and ride a horse, and
Sonny and Hazel.
Yeah.
Doris.
Yes, yeah.
Do 'em all.
And Sonny, we'd go riding on Sundays. He would ride a horse. Dad, he loved to ride horses. And a lot of times, Dad, I would be on an old pony, and I'd start crying, because it was mean or wild. And he would turn the pony loose, and it'd follow the horses, and he put me behind Sonny. Now, my dad would put me down the hardtop riding with a blind man. And I never was sure about that, but he'd say, "You get up there behind Sonny," and he'd make me ride behind him. And I said, "Well, all right." But growing up, when you think about growing up, I was just thinking about some things that come up. When you think about war in that area, what was it like to you when we talk about in the 60s and in that era? What are some things you remember
I'll go
about
back to
West
the
Virginia?
50s.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Well, the things that I can remember the most is how crowded war was on the weekends and the sidewalks. And the sidewalks were so crowded. And I remember the stores that we had, they stayed open. War used to have a Kroger's. I don't know if you knew that, but there was about 4 Kroger's in McDowell County,
Right.
and then we had clothing stores. We had 2 theaters that were
Right.
close together. I always told somebody one thing about war: you could start at the uppermost corporate limits up there at Pine Ridge and walk to the other end of war. And have one beer. You stop at every beer joint and have one beer, and you'd finish 2 6-packs by the time you got there.
It was a big thing.
So the saloons and the Wigwam and the
Yeah.
pool halls,
the Liberty
lunch,
Yeah,
Donna at the
right.
Liberty lunch, and
Yeah.
But it was just a booming place,
Yeah.
and they showed double features at those theaters,
Right.
and you had to stand in line to get in. Both of them were full.
Right.
And then, of course, Fridays, during the fall, the football games, they put that big fence up around there because the people were watching it from the railroad track and building
Right.
fires. And
Right.
it was just
Yeah.
a big spectacle.
I can remember growing up, and I grew up after you did, then, but some reason we had to climb the fence to get in. I don't know why. It couldn't have cost that much to get into the ball game.
About 50 cents. when I
But
was
why
young.
did we climb the fence? I'll never understand
It
that.
was fun.
I think
It was fun.
we felt like you was breaking the law.
Probably tore more clothes up getting them snagged on that barbed wire fence. But yeah, I'd never. Gosh, I was out of college before I ever paid to go to a football game.
Ain't that something? You think of it. It really. So when you think about it, think about the crowd. It was busy. It was a big boom. The population is less than 500 now.
Is it
In
really?
war,
I
yeah,
didn't
it
realize
really is
that.
less than 500. But I'll tell you something about war. And I travel a lot around in McDowell County, and there's a lot of places. I went to Pineville a while back, and it was busy as can be.
Really?
I was at one little intersection. I don't know how many 1,000 cars come through. I sit at a nice convenience store. But when you take war, they got a good mayor over there right now. Right? He's
Who
doing a
is
good
mayor?
deal. David Deal's
David
boy,
Deal.
and he
Okay.
is just he's doing a good job. And the place is clean. He's cleaned up. Everything's weed eaten, cleaned. And we got a good grocery store with Grants down there, good convenience store. We got a new drug store. We got places to get hamburgers, and ATVs come through there like a monster. So I look at that, and every once in a while, people that haven't been there a while, and I know you can go and say, well, but man, I went to Welch, and when you go to Welch, you forget how big Welch is. It's a big area.
Big area.
Buildings and stuff, you know what I mean? And like I said, when you take war, though, and just good people. I meet so many good people. Now, there's always problems.
I had a couple family members that were mayors in war, and I remember I was coming through there one time and got caught speeding. They stopped me, and the guy, the patrolman looks at me, and he says, "You look familiar."
Yeah.
And he said, "What's your name?" And I gave him the. He said, "Oh." He said, "Got your picture in town hall." And I said, "What do you mean you got my picture?" He said, "You gave our mayor a calendar. You're the mayor's cousin. I'm going to let you go."
Oh,
That's when Jeannie was mayor back
right?
then.
Yeah, Lord, yeah. And
Gosh, that's been.
we've all had family be mayor at one point.
Yeah, we have.
Wes was mayor for a while,
Yes.
and I remember Wes stopped back when they had that big oil embargo. Do you remember what he did?
He stopped the wrong. He stopped what he thought was a gasoline
He
truck.
stopped him and told him, "No, you ain't coming through." Okay, he was he gave the train a speeding ticket pulled a car across the tracks. And because what they'd done, they were raising the rent on City Hall. The NAW was. And he told him, he said, no, we're not going to do that. And he pulled a car across the end down there and gave it to, he said, I'm going to give you a speeding ticket every time you come through. Train comes through.
It's amazing. I thought the railroad had given them that.
No, but you think about stuff that was different then. Well, what about when you
I'm
think
sorry.
about, that's all right. When you
I know it's spam, yeah.
when you think about, when I think about war growing up, and man, I know Dad used to tell me you had to park your car on the street before the weekend.
I mean, it was literally, you would have to, the sidewalks would be so full and people standing outside at the theater, people
Right.
standing outside at the local pubs, grocery stores, and literally lots of times you'd have to go out in the street
Right.
To-
Heard that.
just to get from one end to the other.
Yeah, when I was a boy, it was busier when I was a
Several
boy.
restaurants,
Oh, Lord, Sweet Shop.
Al Diner,
Yeah.
Sportsman.
Yeah, you remember
Hotel.
all that stuff was,
I mean, you could.
I don't know,
I
man.
never could afford to go, but they were there. Except for the hole in the wall.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
could afford the hole in the wall.
We owned half of that and didn't know it for 20 years.
Really?
Yeah, see, it was an alley.
I know. And they just put a roof.
Well, what done, Harry Gates was getting the rent off of it. Okay, because he owned the building beside of it. And he was getting the rent off of it forever. And all of a sudden, one time, I don't know, Dad, who got to looking at the deed and said, hold on a second, we own half of that. Gotta have that.
Well, I would love to go back and have one more hole in the wall hot dog.
You'd
and
have to really be-
one more hole in the wall fish sandwich.
Yeah, you'd have to, with the liver, and they had the long hamburger.
Everything was on a hot dog bun
Yeah.
except for the fish sandwich, and everything got chili, mustard, and onions. No matter what you ordered it. Old guy by the name of Louis was the original one. That's before you were born.
Yeah.
And he could make a hot dog in less than 10 seconds.
Yeah. It was a big thing. I can remember going in there, had all kinds of friends that worked there growing up. You would go in there and get stuff. But I think there's history there. And now listen, I know this. Not everybody cares about a lot of history and things. I understand. Man, when you look around Tazewell, there's a lot of things that.
The older you get, the more you care.
You
about
know what I
history.
mean?
I'm telling you,
Isn't it
because
really
you're part
strange?
of it then.
Isn't it really strange? And you don't know memories are memories when you're making them. You think they're just a normal day.
Right, correct.
And you don't know, even with family and the things we do, we don't think that they're history, or we don't think that they're memories. We just think it's a normal day. I watched last night, my wife was playing hide and go seek with one of my grandsons out in the yard. He had a light on and they were running. My wife running all over the yard. And she's running and hiding and she's ducking here and ducking there. And I laughed, looking, I said, now I hope he can remember some of that, when he's older. I hope he'll remember, him and her playing hide and go seek. And same thing my mom did with my grandchildren, and these are great grandchildren. I think about how they, man, it's just it's the memories of
The
those
things we used to do down there,
Yeah.
it's almost unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, we played hide and go seek and used the whole town.
We
You know what I mean?
used East War where I
Yeah.
grew up there.
When you think about your parents, let's talk a little bit about your parents. Tell me about them.
Well, my father, it's hard to tell this story without crying, but my father lost his, the movie October Skies, it started out with a slate fall, top fell.
Right.
And my father, that was October of 57, and December of 57, my father lost his leg and part of his face in the same type of accident.
Okay.
It was right before Christmas, and I told this story in my first sermon. That's when I really got faith and went to church whether my parents went or not, because I went out, and in my father's dinner bucket, he was still in the hospital. They weren't sure he was going to live at Christmas, and went out to the coal pile to get coal, and that was it. There was that little bucket full.
Yeah.
Came in and I told my mother, I said, no, that's it. That's all the coal. We're going free. It was cold and like 2 days before Christmas, and she said, be quiet and sit on the floor and let's pray. Let's have faith. And within a half an hour, a red pickup truck pulled up behind our house there and started shoveling off coal. Didn't know who they were.
Right.
One black gentleman, white gentleman, they just started shoveling up coal. I remember the black gentleman gave me, he called it a cartoon of Coke. And he said, here's your Christmas present. They were the little 6.5 ounce Cokes.
Right.
And we had coal. And my mother's faith, that just sit down and let's pray
Yeah.
that we will be okay. And we ultimately were. And my father, he recovered from the leg. And it was rough for several years. But the time I was in junior high and high school, it was lived like everybody else then. Wasn't so poor.
Yeah.
So, but my father, he just taught me a work ethic, and my father, he would get his electric bill and the water bill, and he wouldn't go home. He would stop and pay it before he got home. I mean, I don't want to owe anybody anything. So
that's something.
They instilled that, and of course, my mother worked there at the drugstore all those years. And it gave the biggest 5-cent ice cream cone of anybody in the world. I'm telling you, these little kids that come in, and some of them didn't have a nickel. They may have 3 cents, but to my mother, they all got the big ice cream cone. So, but my parents, that was a great influence on me. Still are.
Yeah. Where were they from? I mean, like, where was your mother from originally that she wound up at war?
My mother was born there.
Okay.
She was born in Susanna. You know where Susanna is?
No, I don't.
That's that. Before you get to number 1 Yukon, now it's the forks of the road.
Okay.
Where you turn and go to.
I didn't know it was called that.
That used to be called Susanna.
I didn't know that.
She was born there at Susanna, and my dad was born in Matoka.
Okay.
And his father came to the old Warrior Mines up there.
Right.
He worked there, but he was killed when my dad was 7 years old. And my mother grew up there in the Cove. And, but they're both, they were war residents. My dad from the time he was a little boy, my mother her whole life, never lived anywhere else.
Right.
And died as residents of war.
My mom still lives right there where her and dad, she's lived in the same house all of her life, probably 6 months. And that's when it burnt down. And then he rebuilt it, and she moved back again, same place. And when Dad passed away, I thought, well, bring her over here, bring her closer, and stuff like that. But she got people to look out for her right there. To go to the store for her, go to the post office for her. That's where she's comfortable. And I told her I would never. You can't make her do anything anyway. I wouldn't try. She's too tough. But I mean, she's healthier than I am. Okay, but I think about things that she's comfortable where she's at, and she likes where she is, and that's a big part.
My mother moved in with me. Of course, she never gave up her house or anything, and she moved in with me about the last 6 months she was living, and it was just a necessity. It was better, and she didn't want a nursing home. I didn't want a nursing home.
Right,
so
right.
She moved in with me, and
yeah, and your dad was born in Matoka.
Matoka.
Yeah. I'm telling you something. You can trace the greats back to McDowell County. I don't care what anybody says. I'm a real firm believer, and we don't even call it McDowell County. We call it the county.
McDowell or the county,
the county,
or the Free State.
When you say you're from the county,
or the patch.
Yeah, that's exactly. So you're from the county. People know exactly, and you don't have to explain yourself, and and say, all right, where I'm from. This is. I laughed one time. I went to England. And I'd done a lot of work in England, and I almost needed an interpreter while I was over there.
I've been there to understand that.
I said my accent was they could tell it just fine. And I went one time, I was in California doing some work, and I'd ordered at a real nice restaurant. And I was with some guys that was really cool. And anyway, we was talking, so I ordered, and the lady said, would you order again? It sounds like poetry when you speak. I said, ma'am, this is just natural.
My grandmother, like I said, she came over from Scotland, caught a train from Ellis Island to Roanoke, and was staying with some distant relatives there. When she got off the train, my grandfather was coming from North Carolina, and he was switching trains. Mm-hmm. And she said, I looked at him and thought, oh, you know. And he looked at her and she said, "You ever believe in love at first sight?" And she said, "We talked about an hour." And he said, "I'm going to West Virginia to get a job in the coal mines, but I'm going to come back here and find you. Tell me who you're staying with." And he, about 6 months later, he came back and stayed a couple days in Roanoke and got married and took my grandmother back to war.
Ain't that cool?
And she died in war.
Ain't that something?
Died in war.
Man, I don't know. You know, I think my family grew up right there. You know, we're all from there.
Well, you know where my grandmother lived, up on the hill there.
Right, yes, sir.
Across from the little park. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's...
Everybody, you know, that grew up there and lived there, and that was just, I don't know, it was, times change, oh, don't they, brother? I mean, they really
Yes,
do,
sir. Yeah.
and we can act like they don't, but things are different. And, you know, I mean, when you think about people that really influenced your young life growing up, whether coming out of high school or where you was, who were some people that really influenced you?
A lot of people say Frida Riley. She did influence me. She was too hard. But your dad, I've told this story many times, Reverend A.J. Gardner. I don't know
Right.
if you
Oh, I
remember
remember
A.J.
Brother Gardner. Yeah, sure. Brother Sister Gardner.
I know you don't remember McDaniels.
No, I heard
Probably
him talk
heard about
him
him.
talk
but-
about
but
him. Yeah.
I would. They said I would yell at him, call him McDaniel, but Brother Gardner was a gunsmith,
I didn't know that.
and he
I was
fixed
real
guns,
little
and
then.
he let me shoot my first .22. We went down to the creek bank, and first time I shot, I hit a bottle that he threw out in the creek, and I couldn't hit anything since then. And him, and then Mario Paletti.
Right.
You know, I just love Mario. And you know about tough now. He was tough on us.
Cut from a different cloth, wasn't it?
Very much a different cloth.
Him and Coach Strom.
And,
all
well,
those.
now, you know, I ended up refereeing ball with Fred Schramm till, you know, years later. But Fred would come to my house and was having trouble with algebra, and he would come to my house on Sundays and tutor me to make sure my dad, I was passing, but my dad said, if you make below a C or B or whatever, you're not going to play football. So Fred would come, and Jimmy Jones.
Right.
Jimmy Jones.
Yes, sir.
Those are the ones that had the most. But of course, then lots of impressions.
Right.
You know, I always admired O.C. Jaber.
Yeah.
You know, of course, we
That was the name,
we were
what?
neighbors.
Think about that name, OC, you know, and I look back on that with Bill and all them. I think about that Bill, I think Bill's dad was Greek. I believe he was Greek.
I'm not sure.
He's been to Greece several times. I think Bill's dad was Greek.
I was thinking Lebanese, but
It might have been.
But
And,
and then Buck Berry's, Joe.
I didn't know them.
And
Never
Leo
heard that.
Buck Berry. They were next door neighbors for a while, and then they moved to Coalwood. He became the assistant warden in Moundsville till he retired.
Huh.
And,
Well,
but now he ran right across from the Church of God Church. And you're probably too young to remember this, where the funeral home is now. It used to be a junkyard.
I didn't remember that.
Junkyard. And we would save up money, get $1, and go to the junkyard though, and Joe Buckberry ran the junkyard.
Yeah.
And he would sell us a car top.
Oh, man. Yeah, I know exactly where you're going with that.
And we'd beat the sides in on that car top, and four of us would get in that car top and ride it. Lots of times close to Jaeger.
Down the river.
Down the river. And
You could ride it down
And
the
then
river.
we would thumb back. And
Yeah.
I was telling my fiancee, Teresa, about that. And she sort of laughed. And do you remember Chuck Martin? Do you know that name? Lived there in War.
No, I do remember Moyer Martin.
Well, it was his father was
Okay.
one of the sons.
Moyer
was
Martin.
Moyer's sons. And went to a funeral a few weeks ago, and Chuck showed up, and he was talking about me and him riding that car top down the river, and Jimmy Gibson, and I don't know if you knew Jim, and
Man.
Dave Murray and.
You know, people riding car, we rode car tops and we'd ride them in the wintertime in the snow if we could
Yeah,
get one.
the sled.
And if you happened to leave a car parked somewhere, it was open game.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? It was open game and we cut the top off one. And I didn't know you could take $1 and buy one.
Well, you could back then. Of course,
Yeah.
they were two junkyards.
Right.
Joe Buckberry had one there, and then down there next to the school across the river where the Owl Drive-In was, there was
Yeah.
one there, Junkman Brown. I don't
Okay.
remember we called him Junkman Brown.
You remember Willard Wright?
Oh,
Yeah. Willard Wright's place down there had a junk store in Willard Wright. And Dad said that's when they started paying income taxes. Okay, when they started paying income tax, he said, I remember when I was a boy, he said, Willard Wright and his brother there, and I forget what his brother's name was, but he told his brother, he said, now, his brother's telling him all about it, and he said, well, all right, we can pay a little bit less, don't pay too much, so he said, yeah.
well, Willard actually, of course, it's long gone, but buddies threw me a bachelor party downtown there. And Willard came.
Uh-huh.
And he had this beautiful straw hat. Willard wore those summer hats. And found out he was just wandering around. They said, what's going on here? And he said, well, I'm getting married. And
Yeah.
he said, well, here's your wedding present for me. And he gave me that straw hat. And gosh, I kept it for
Ain't
years.
that something? Ain't that something?
I kept that hat for years. Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah, I remember Willard.
Yeah, we would go in his store on the way home from school and just look at things, okay?
Oh, yeah.
We would go in that junk store and look at stuff till he'd finally run us off. He'd tolerate us a little while, but then he wouldn't, that's like when we would go in R.J. Allen in Western Auto. We'd go in Western Auto there, man, we'd go in there and just look and wander. And he had a unicycle there too, and he had one of them unicycles, and he would say, anybody that can ride it, I'll let you have it. And I had hit the floor more times trying to ride that unicycle.
Do you remember the War Hardware?
Yeah.
Jack McGuire.
Sure.
The same
Yeah.
way you'd go in there, they were
You could look.
competitors.
You'd look at everything.
Roy Allen always had that big cigar.
Yeah. That was, man, you think about, I remember the night that burnt down. Because where we lived on the hill up there were bullets flying everywhere. I
Oh,
mean, they were flying where they had all the ammunition, hitting fire trucks out front, and you couldn't really put the fire out before the bullets
And of
flew.
course, Johnny Allen moved down
Right.
around Knoxville when I was living there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Johnny lives in Louisville, when it looks like Louisville, but it's Louisville, and it's on a lake right close to
Well.
Knoxville. And I was running the campus for King College down there. And the secretary calls back and she says, there's somebody out here to see you. And I said, who is it? She said, he won't tell me who he is. I thought it was some mad
That's a little
student or
scary,
something
ain't
like that. So I walked out there and it was Johnny Allen and Cookie.
Well,
And
gee,
then we
man.
visited several times. Of course,
Yeah.
Cookie just passed away a year or so ago.
Man, he was always so kind to me. Johnny was too.
Oh, Johnny
he
was
was
great-
always so
great guy,
nice to me.
great guy.
Man, just super nice. He always was to me.
And kept that store open as long as he could.
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it was there's a lot of stuff when I think about Mr. Jones there, and I laughed. Mr. Jones he knew how to run an election for mayor because he'd have a pocket full of $5 bills.
Never got beat.
He had $5 bills in his pocket, and he'd haul them all day long. He'd haul people in there, to vote. He knew exactly what he was doing, and I think that's a good open way to do it. But he would bring them in.
He brought him in.
He'd bring them in there, and Mr. Jones never got beat. He'd just go right on by his business. And
I'm surprised Jimmy hadn't gotten into politics there.
I think he just don't want to. He's got enough.
Probably saw what his dad did.
Probably.
But I-
I thought about stuff a while back. I was thinking about some things and looking at some offices in Tazewell and doing some things. And then I got thinking about it. I said, some of the abuse people take that do run for public office, you know what I mean?
Been there.
And I got to thinking,
Been there.
Jerry, I said, I don't know if I want that. At this point in my life, I've got to where I'm a little settled. And I don't mind serving. Okay, and I like to serve in a servant way about doing things, but I said I don't think I'd want to be to where I was just hammered all the time over stuff that you can't control. And even if it's something I can control, I don't think because I've got a little different.
Well, I still have folks that try to get me to run for mayor again. And just a few minutes ago,
Right.
went into Food Line, and a guy came up and he said, "Boy, we sure miss you in town." And said, won't you run again?" And I said, "Well, I'm not even living here now." Well, you still got your house. And I said, "I still got my house," but I said, "No, I'm not getting
Yeah.
back into politics."
Yeah, I don't know. Well, when do you think about education? I mean, was education pushed in your home, or was it something that you talked about?
Absolutely, John.
Uh-huh.
There's tell a story about this, and my parents did save money for me to go to Marshall, and it cost $500 a year as room and board and everything. But I didn't. I wanted to save that money, so first year I'd use it, but as soon as I got to Huntington, I got a job. Then I'm coming home that summer. And my dad had a good job working for Caples then, and he was in charge of hiring these summer workers. And I'm thinking, I'm going to go home and have me a good job. He wouldn't hire me because he was afraid if I went to mines, I wouldn't go back and get that education. I can remember my mother crying, so I picked up a little bag and I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to Radford.
Right.
I took off and I started thumbing. I got about a mile away, and here come my dad.
Yeah.
And I said, "You change your mind, you're going to give me a job in the mines?" He said, "No, I'm taking you to Radford." And he dropped me off there. You remember Andy Koski?
Yeah,
I lived with Andy Koski and a few of those guys, Tony Hicks and a few of them there from War, and Jimmy Doody. There was about 8 of us that lived in this apartment, and got a job there in a foundry, and made enough money to buy me a car. And but I knew then, my dad had pushed education, and he just did not want me to go into coal mines, and he was just determined, come what may, that I was going to get a college education. And after working the first summer in the foundry, I said, I think that's a pretty good idea. That's pretty smart.
I think that inspired a lot of people.
But and the teachers. The teachers were different, John. I tell a story in junior high, that we had some kids in junior high turned 16, they quit school. And we had teachers that would encourage them to quit. You're never going to amount to anything, just turn 16, quit.
Right.
But then there were those of us that participated and did things and entered. They encouraged that. Rosemary Freeman, Jack Freeman's wife, great influence. T.K. Tandy. I mean, there were so many people that, they looked after me. They looked after me. And,
I think that was the Lord, though, making a way before you knew you needed a way made.
I think you're right.
You know what I mean? Ain't it something so beautiful? The things that I think sometimes we think we're so smart and we make these good decisions when really the best decisions of in our life was made for us. Well, you know what I mean? They're made for us ahead of time, and I think about that a lot. And I think about how there's so many things in my life. I was thinking about the other day. And I got some other things I want to share about that are important, but I think about marriage. We think, and I'll just tell you what I believe, and it's all right. We don't see it all eye to eye, but getting married, marrying the right person or marrying a good person is a gamble. Okay, we can do some things up front and sort of look at them and think about them and wonder about them, but people change and people become different, and people are good at hiding things. Okay, and a man or a woman can marry a nut and not know it. And I don't mean that in any way, say exactly how it sounds, but they can marry a lunatic and not know it's a lunatic. And I've seen it happen before. And listen, I'm like this, and I'm real plain about it. Okay, I mean, I've been married 45 years, but I mean, you can marry somebody, and I don't think you should live your life miserable. Okay, I mean, I believe in the whole thing, and you ought to, but when it comes to the till death do us part, if you're with a lunatic and your life is just horrible, I just don't know. And I'm just telling you what I think. We can disagree.
I think, we're sort of going to disagree. I agree with you to a certain extent in that I think maturity changes that.
Right.
And the lady that I'm engaged to now, there's no doubt in my mind.
Right.
We're the same age.
Right.
And of course, I would have been married 55 years.
Right.
Plus, had I stayed married to the first one, but
Right.
I do agree that if you're in that bad relationship,
Golly, I just don't. I see so many men that now, and when I see a woman now trying to find a good man, okay, and a man trying to find a good woman, and I don't know, maybe if it's because like I'm looking and I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing them from a different perspective. There's some crazy people out there.
my wife passed away, and I was not looking.
Right.
My fiance, she wasn't looking. I just saw her in Rotary and thought, well, maybe somebody go out to dinner. I was so
Right.
lonely.
Right.
I was lonely, and I fell in love with her.
Yeah. See, I think, and that's a different thing.
But we both think God put us together.
Yeah,
And
versus an 18 or 20-year-old boy.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's a
big
different thing.
That's a big difference.
Because you're looking at different things. I am more impressed with I was always more impressed with a woman that works than I was if she was in a red bikini and long blonde hair.
Me too.
Okay?
Me too.
I mean, to me, when I was looking for somebody that I wanted to get married, and I knew a point in my life I needed to get married or I'd never going to amount to anything. Okay?
We're all like that.
I mean, I said,
It's a man.
I got to looking at my life and I said, I'm going to have to do that. And then when I began to look, I fell in love with my wife, but we were engaged 2 weeks, okay, and got married. But I mean, when I think about that thing, but I think about people that do make it together, that's good relationships, that there's a big gamble.
Well, yeah, it is.
I mean, you know what I mean. And we think we're so smart that we've done all these things and sort of figured it out and seen what, I don't know, so much of my life has been out of control, God's just done.
Well,
Yeah.
people say, you're 75 and still in school. And they said, well, why are you still in school? And I said, well, God's got a plan for me. I
Yeah.
just don't know what I'm going to be
Right.
when I grow up. So
I like it.
I just don't, it's.
I like it.
When I grow up, God's leading me, and I don't do anything without praying about it.
Yeah, that's
And,
good, man.
It's really, really so blessed now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just so blessed.
What are some things that you learned growing up that have stayed with you and kept you balanced? When you talk about growing up in West Virginia, growing up in the mountains, what are some things that have kept you solid? I know there's always a few principles that we have. I mean, I don't have 1,000, but I've got some that I'm pretty solid on. What are some things you have?
For me, my father, and I told you a story about him, but the work ethic that was instilled in me. I'm not happy if I'm not working.
Right.
And people say, well, can't you retire? Yeah, I went almost a year and didn't work and was miserable and just took a job in Raleigh now. So work ethic, I think growing up, honesty and integrity, it was always instilled in me. And to treat people as human beings, and so much of that is not being done.
Right.
And we're all human. It makes no difference what color we are, or how much money we have, or anything like that. We all are God's children, and we all should be given the respect that we deserve.
Right. What I try to look at, and I understand, I think when we hold to that, I always feel like I can respect someone I don't agree with.
Absolutely.
Okay, now, if I feel like they don't respect me, then I just get away from them.
Yeah, that.
You know what I mean? I just dial it on back and move back out of the way, and I don't have to prove. I don't know if it's what I've got. I don't have to prove my point to nobody.
No.
I don't have to prove myself to nobody. And I think there comes a point in your life. There's some things I was sharing with my cousin. I said, I wish I would have learned. Some things I wish I would have learned a little earlier on that I didn't. It only come with age. Okay, I don't have to have as much as I thought I had to have. Money wise and financially.
Right.
You get to thinking that and because I believe that you trade your time for money and your money for stuff. That's the way life works. Time for money, money for stuff.
Stuff means nothing.
It goes away.
Goes away.
It goes away. I mean, when I talked to several people about interviewing you, they said, well, ask him about his house. Ask him about the fire. Ask him about this. I said, and everybody wants to know, what's going on. And I've got a good.
Well, I'm fixing it back.
Yeah, well, good, because they're concerned about that, all right?
It's a beautiful house. It's a historic house.
My Lord.
And it's empty now. I go down and check on it and
Yeah.
feed my cat, and ready to start cleaning. Doing the one wall was damaged very extensively, but
Right.
nothing very structural. And
Well, that's always heartbreaking.
So it'll be. Oh, it's been heartbreaking,
Oh,
but
gee.
been out of the house, and of course I've never been homeless.
Right.
Teresa's father, I asked him a couple mornings ago, I said, well, how are you, Dr. Payne, this morning? And like I said, he's 105. And he said, well, I'm okay. How are you? And I said, well, I'm still a homeless orphan. He said, Jerry, you might be an orphan, but you won't be homeless as long as I'm alive.
Good.
I'm so blessed.
Well, when we think about stuff as influences, I don't know. I think about things like that, principles that we sort of set forth and say, I'm going to hold to this. I've got little things that I hold on to. First thing is, I don't never say what's on my mind, because I can change my mind. Okay, but once I blurt it out, like if your wife says, honey, am I too fat? You know what I mean? Well, you can't say, well, just fat enough, or, a little fatter. You can't, but see, you got stuff that you can't say. And I've met people that thought they were being really cute by saying, I tell you what, I always say what's on my mind. And I said, gee whiz, I can change my mind, Jerry.
I don't brag about it, but I see I'm just the opposite.
Uh-huh.
I've told Teresa when we got together, I said I'm my own worst enemy. I don't know when to keep my mouth shut because it comes out when it shouldn't come out. As soon as I've said it,
Right.
I think, why did I say that?
Yeah.
But I'm just the opposite of that, and I'm really trying
Right.
not to
I
be
think
that
what you
way.
might need to get you one of them rubber bands like smoking people do. You know what I mean? Pop it on your wrist. Like when you say something that's on your mind, just pop it on your wrist.
Pop it before you say it.
I think you get it. I was sharing this morning with a young lady at the Y, and Phyllis, I was sharing with her how, and I teach my grandkids about tools. And I pour out the tools, and I name them all for them, and then I make them name them. And if they get them wrong, I hit them in the head with it. I hit them in the head with a screwdriver, pop them on the head if they get it, Philip, if they get it wrong or whatever. And it really helps them, a little pop on the head. And I could tell when my youngest grandson, when he didn't quite know, he'd start shutting his eyes because he knew I was going to pop him on the head. And so sometimes that will work. And, but I think there's things that we can change our mind about stuff.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
we can change our mind.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we come in. I think if politicians would say sometimes, hey, I just changed my mind. You know what I mean? I changed my mind about this, and I think that's...
And lots of times you change your mind. I teach my students when I was teaching, you can never get enough information, and business is all about making a decision.
Right.
And that's when I'm teaching you in this MBA program, every course you take, every course is written, it's about making a decision. So we're going to give you all the tools you need to make the decision. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to make the correct decision, but
Right.
I'm going to try my best to provide you with the tools. And I think sometimes we don't have the tools to get the job done, and that's why we can change our mind.
Right.
When we get the information, we have something on our mind, and it can change because
Yeah.
we find out different facts.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%.
I do that too. I mean, there's things in my life I look at and I think, well, this is the way I did think about this, but I changed my mind about it, and I'm thinking about something else, and I got something else on my mind, and I don't know.
I seem to change my mind a lot more lately. The older you get, but you learn. Sometimes it's wise to change your mind.
Yeah, there's things that I look at. I think what I've run into, Jerry, is I don't, at one point in my life, I was extremely ambitious. Okay?
Me too.
I was I had 8 restaurants, had other business. My son said I was a serial entrepreneur because
You were?
I would
You
go
were.
in any business, I would look for stuff. I think, but I don't know. I've got to a point to where I just don't know. I look at life a little different, And it's different because I believe life has chapters, doesn't it? I mean,
Oh, yes.
it has chapters,
Oh, yeah.
and you got to know when the page has been flipped in order to understand where you are. If not, you'll find yourself standing out in the snow in a T-shirt. And you got to know the seasons of life. And I feel like there's a different season in my life. And I look at that point and I say, all right, I mean, there was a time, I mean, I had 107 TV stations at one point. I mean, there's things that I done all that when in Italy, when they had their COVID summit, I done all their programming from here in Tazewell. When the truckers when the truckers had their big strike in Canada, I don't know if you remember that, they had a big strike.
I do remember.
I done their programming and their media work
I didn't know that.
from here. But you know, I've had people want me to do things now, but I say, you know, I think I'm going to go to the lake. You know what I mean? There's still things I want to do. I found this, and I know this. I got things I want to talk about, and I appreciate. Only reason I'm gonna ever let you leave here is if you'll come back again.
I'll come back.
But what I think is, I found myself several years ago, almost 3 years ago, losing friends that would die. Okay, just die. Okay. Well, and I study a lot about depression.
I lost one last week.
Okay.
James Adams.
I love James.
James was
good.
He was 6 days older than me. We grew up next door neighbors.
James has spent summers at my home working on my home, and my kids.
That'd kill me. And I didn't know it.
When my kids, my youngest daughter, when she got hurt one time, she didn't come to me or her mom. She said, "No, I want James to look at it. He'd been at our house so long." Okay, he would come in.
Great man.
But so what I found was in my life, I got to losing people. When I began to study on people being depressed, it was because their world got smaller. Okay? And I said, you know, I don't want my world to get smaller because I see this is where it can come from. I need new friends. Okay, I need to add more. And well, you can't just go out tomorrow and get 20 new friends. No. Okay, so what I done though was start putting myself in positions for new relationships and new friendships, and started strengthening some that I already knew. And man, my world has grew exponentially. It's grew. I mean, when I went on the board for the Tazewell County Fair. Well, I mean, I don't need nothing else to do, okay? But I said, well, all right. When they approached me, I said, I'll do it. And I went on there, and I've made so many friends.
Of course.
But I think that can happen. I mean, what do you think about it? Do you think our world can become small?
Let me tell you, and it's funny you said that because growing up in war, there wasn't a lot to do. When I grew up, did a lot of fishing on the river there. Got 2 new fishing poles in my car that I just bought 2 weeks ago, fishing tackle and the whole thing. Had to go to Bristol week before last, pick up something, coming back down the interstate, and I says, well, I'm just going to stop at Rural Retreat and fish. And I found out now I got a lifetime license, so I hadn't fished for 50 years.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I've got some guy at the store yesterday, his wife were putting the groceries in the car, and I was getting some groceries, and he looked over there and he said, I'm going with that guy. He's got 2 fishing poles in the car. So my fishing poles will stay in the car.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You gotta
I think our world can get small if we're not careful.
Yeah,
okay, and we can do it. We can do it for the sake of saying, well, you know, I'm on my own, or I'm a loner, or I'm this, or I'm that. And God, I don't believe He built us to be alone like that, you know. And see, it's sort of like when you're talking about how when you started getting lonely and your wife passed away, and how God brought this other relationship into your life, because we're not built to be alone. No. And that's where the enemy
we need some alone
separates.
time.
Yeah.
We need some alone time.
At least 10 minutes in the shower.
Yeah, need some alone time.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, it can. And you know, you're a lot younger than I am, but as the years and people will start to tell you this, they will start to go by faster and faster and faster. It seems.
Yeah. They really do, don't they?
They really do.
You know, I've tried to purpose at this point in our life. My wife and I spend a lot of time together, me and her. We've raised the kids and we got the grandkids. And I know a lot of grandparents out there, I want to keep them grandbabies with me every day. And we're not like that. I love my grandkids, okay?
Me too.
I love them. But we got a camper we keep in the driveway with 50 gallons of water, plugged up, ready to go. We're talking this week, where are we going? We want to leave out probably Wednesday night or Thursday. We'll leave out. We go down to Bristol, spend the weekend. I camp at Cracker Barrel at Exit 7, or I camp
There's
somewhere.
so many
I
places
the
to
lake.
go within 2 or 3
Yeah.
hours driving. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and we try to spend that time together, me and her, and really focus on that and enjoy that. We enjoy our time together. Now, I enjoy my kids. I miss them when I don't see them a little bit.
Absolutely.
And but still,
understand
yeah,
that.
I try to focus on it and those relationships and spending that time together, not
I
taking
agree.
it for granted.
I agree.
I don't know. Well, tell me. All right, let's go into something. I've been wanting to ask you about Marshall University. How come you to choose Marshall University?
Rebellious. My mother wanted me to go to West Virginia University, and a lot of my friends were going up there, and I just had this feeling, if I go up there, all we'll do is party and get in trouble.
Okay.
So, I went up to Marshall to a couple of high school conferences, a Key Club thing and everything. Fell in love with Marshall. I thought it was a nice town. Always thought I would retire in Huntington. So, just liked it there.
Yeah.
And,
It kept you there.
but my mother, she was disappointed that I didn't go to WVU. But,
Yeah. Well, what was when you think about leaving West Virginia, where you were war? Leaving and going to Marshall. What are some of the big adjustments you had to make?
gosh, it was just seeing so many new things that I didn't. First year I lived in a dorm, and it was pretty miserable, and I'd run and catch the bus. I could catch the bus coming down Fifth Avenue on Fridays, and I came home three Fridays in a row, and somebody'd have to pick me up at Welch.
Okay.
Well, the third Friday, going back on the bus on Sunday, my dad says, "Son, I won't see you again until Thanksgiving." So I started getting out in Huntington, and actually started going down to a boxing gym. I boxed some Golden Gloves when I was there, and Huntington just was so much to do. And
Yeah.
I'd never been to a McDonald's.
Right.
And the dorm was close to McDonald's, so when I had a job, so lots of times I would miss the dorm food, so I'd have to go and
Right.
live off of McDonald's fish sandwiches. And then there was a Price's Bakery that stayed open all night. It had donuts and milk, and so I'd
Right.
go study in there, and I just loved Huntington, and then worked for a school supply place there. And of course, when I graduated, they gave me a job, and that's how I wound up in Virginia. They wanted me to come down and work a sales territory for them in Virginia, and I did that for several years, and that's then Apple Computer started, and they wanted to be big in schools, so they started rating the people that knew the school business, and from that sales point, so
Right.
I went to work for Apple for 10 years, selling and servicing Apple computers, and
A man was loaded up on that stock when you went to work for
I
him.
had some.
Did
They
you?
were about to go broke. They fired Steve Jobs,
Right.
and I'm just not even gonna say. Made some blunders, but that was a biggie. 'Cause I thought they were going under.
Right, right. That's something, ain't it? Well, when you think about it, and I want to come back to some of this other, but when you think about this, I want to look into the future a little bit. When you think about AI and what's going on, okay? When you think about college and school and things like that, what are some changes you're seeing in this? Are you dealing with AI? And
Oh,
all these things?
absolutely. In fact,
What are you seeing?
when I came to Bluefield State, actually, 3 years ago, I guess. And of course, I came to Bluefield, moved back here. My wife wanted to come home to die and everything. So, first thing the president did was put me on an AI committee, because I was working for Lindsey Wilson College at the time in Columbia, Kentucky. We were concerned about AI, so I had given a presentation to the faculty on AI. And so I've studied it almost since the inception. And
What year was that?
What year is it now? It was about the time COVID was going on.
Okay, in 2020.
Yeah, about 2020.
Okay.
we know it was coming, and but the thing I can say about AI, we met once a month. Our committee at Bluefield State did, and it changed on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
And it's changing now. And when you think you got a handle on part of it, and this is what's going to happen,
Right.
It's going to change. So what we're doing now, and in fact, this job in Raleigh, when they hired me to run their business program, asked me about AI, and I said, well, you're going to have to embrace it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to let these students know right away that they can use it as a tool, and they can use it to cheat, but you're going to find out sooner or later.
Right.
That they've used
Yeah.
it in that way.
Right.
But use it as a tool to maybe get a different idea, to get a different
Right.
thought. But then use your brain to expand on it.
Right.
Don't use AI to expand on
Right.
what AI is already telling you.
Right.
And of course you could catch the ones. They did come out with a couple programs that you could run it through, turn it in, and AI could write some beautiful papers, and you'd tell them how many references, but it just made up the references, and if
Right.
the professor tried to check the they're not there. They're not there. So it's one thing I worry about is it's taking some jobs
Yeah.
that it's going to replace some
You know, and-
clerical type things.
and there's a lot of stuff that when I research and look, talk about jobs, and I got one grandson that's just starting into college, and he's not quite sure what to do because of the movement of AI and what's going on.
Well,
I mean, I'm stuff I do now that we use, we've got more and more, we use it in what I'm doing in media and everything we do. We use AI in a lot of things now.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I can go through and do some things that's just really cool that we work with, and I've learned a lot. I'm trying to learn it as I go and use few different AI programs and things. The biggest thing I learned is like AI, you have to tell it who it is before you ask it a question. For me, okay? I was going the other day, I was traveling, I was going to a race in Kingsport, a race in Pulaski, then I'm going on to Myrtle Beach. So I said, so when I started out with AI, I said, as my travel assistant and personal assistant, how would you advise me and could you give me this information? And then I went through, I said, I want to know my gas mileage, I want to know stops in between, I want to know what you recommend, and it wrote it out just as beautiful, it's laid out just as neat, okay? And, we used an encyclopedia growing up. I mean,
Yep.
Janice and I laughed about that going down the road the other day. I said how we would, you get that encyclopedia out and try to copy what it was saying, and it's really hard to do. And but I was thinking about how, so now as they grow up, these kids get now the point they're using, it's going to be as big a part as the encyclopedia was to us
Oh, yeah.
in the 70s, and then when Google come along, it was a big leap. But I mean now this AI is so much different. I mean, gee whiz.
Well, I can remember like it was yesterday when I decided I was leaving Apple Computer. My mother was dying, and she'd been sick, but didn't think she was going to die yet, and called home. And doctor said, if you want to see her, she's asking for you. Desert Storm hit that night, and didn't get to see her. But the reason I'm telling that, I was at an Apple Computer meeting. I was working for Apple at the time in Chicago, and they introduced the CD-ROM. That was the most innovative thing at the time.
Yeah.
And they had 2 CDs.
Yeah.
One of them was a tour of the Holy Land, and the other one was Encyclopedia Britannica.
Gee
And they
whiz.
says you will never have to open up a book again. You can go on, put this CD in there, go on and
Yeah.
type in what you want,
Right.
and it'll find it on that CD. Series of
Yeah,
CDs.
right.
One wouldn't hold it all.
Right, right.
But now you don't. Now you can pick up your phone and.
Yeah. I mean, it's just I see the changes and I see the challenges they have, but I also see, and I've shared this with a lot of different ministers and different people. through my grandsons, I've been looking at things and watching other kids and seeing that there's a difference in children, and not children, but teenagers. Okay, it's not a bad thing, but I see a difference, and I'm trying to sort of focus and look at it. Like for example, I go in Ohio, and I've been blessed to speak at the school up there, a big private school that one of my grandson goes to their assembly and stuff like that. But in the midst of all that, I watch these boys that are turning into young men that are graduating, their friendships become solid, different, okay? I mean, we had good friendships, but it's different. I watch them respond to each other, and I watch them say, hey, yeah, I'll get that book for you. I'll do this for you. And then I also, they made me start, my grandson made me start playing poker with these boys. I'm talking about from 13 to 16, 17. Of course, they take my money, all right?
Of course.
I mean, these boys were serious about their poker. I mean, these 13-year-old boys know how to play five-card stud, all right? They would just rob me and get my $10 every time. But, I mean, I watch them how they think about it, and they look at it, and they study on it, and it's interesting to look at them and think about it. And some of them, too, are not as much social media as what you think they are. I mean, they just sort of move off of it. And I know everybody said all that, but I watch these boys, and it might be the school they go to. It's a private school, Christian school. It's more Mennonite, okay. But they're really. I watch them not as much concerned about social media and things like that, and that gives me hope. Okay.
I'm looking for that.
Okay, it gives me hope, because the first thing I told my grandson, I said, "Now listen, I'm not that excited about you going to college, but you want to go." Okay, I think it's great, But I said, I don't want some girl with purple dreadlocks you come home with a rainbow T-shirt on next week. I said, here's the deal. I said, that scares me. I'm just telling you exactly. I'm saying what scares me. Oh no, Papa only talked to me, but I mean, I know because you can be influenced. Okay, and we all can share in times in our life, and you want to hope somebody's strong enough to where they can be solid and where they're at and what they believe. But I've got hope. I've got hope.
You're talking about the AI and the hope and all that. I do have, I think we will prevail. But is the Christian school still open out there next to the tracks? I think Kennedy.
They still have it there. Yeah, they don't have any students in it, active students in it right now. Just a few that are homeschooled.
Well, when they started, it was pretty big.
Yes, sir, it was real big.
So I was mayor at the time. And I told this story just
Right.
last week or so, asking me about AI.
Uh-huh.
So I was mayor, and they called and said, "Would you come out to our ribbon cutting?" I said, "Of course, on a Saturday,
Right.
go put on my suit and I go out there." And I walk in and they shake my hands, and the sanctuary's filling up. I mean, there's people there, and they hand me a program. And he says, "We're so glad that you agreed to do our keynote address today."
Okay.
I thought I was going to keep the ribbon. I look at it there, Jerry Wood, Honorable Jerry Wood, Mayor,
That's
keynote.
beautiful, yeah.
And I told somebody, I said, I wished I'd have had AI at that time, because I'm sitting there, I've got 10 minutes to come up with a keynote
beautiful.
address. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, And so I started sharing a story about
Right.
my son that went to VMI and how persistent, and,
Right.
he wasn't really VMI material at the time, but he just kept on and had the faith and all
Right.
that. So God gave me that. Gave me about that 15, 20-minute speech, but I told somebody I don't know, maybe last week, I'd love to have AI at that time.
Well, being caught off guard, and I got points over there, but I think one time I had a WVV, when I first put in a Christian TV station in War, first put a station in, WVVA called me, wanted to interview me. Yeah, oh boy, well, Jim Dandy, I thought that's something else. Well, they come down to Warren, done a little pre-interview with me, sitting upstairs in the office, talk about how the ministry and things like that. Putting a Christian TV station, a big thing. And in 92, so I said, anyway, we walked down on the street. We're down there, they get the cameras, roll them, and the mic over. They said, I'm here with John Dash, Christian TV station and a TV minister. I said, okay, thank you. They said, Mr. Dash, tell us this. With all the trouble Jimmy Swaggart has been in, why would you want to be a TV preacher? That's their question, okay? So I'm thinking, Lord help me, Lord help me. And I said, well, here's the deal I run into. I read a little story one time over there in the red print in the New Testament about an old boy that was way out one day, and they caught this girl and she wasn't doing quite right. And a gentleman stepped up, sort of a long-haired guy from Nazareth, and said, he without sin, let him cast the first stone. And I said, I ain't much on carrying a bag of rocks, are you? They got quiet as can be after that.
Good response.
But, the thing about it is, sometimes you got to be instant, in situations. You
Yep.
sort of got to say, well, let Lord help me.
Didn't expect that.
No, I didn't have no,
Didn't expect
I
that.
just didn't, I didn't anticipate them asking me about, I just didn't anticipate it, okay? All right, let's hit this, Sister Lick. I want to talk about you being town manager, mayor, part of the Historical Society. That's a big deal here in Tazewell, man. You set a mark, and you've done a lot of things here in Tazewell.
Thank you.
Town manager was a big deal, wasn't it?
It was a big deal, and I spent, still got the newspaper, the front page says Wood retires after 32 years.
Yeah.
So it
Gee.
was 32 years of
Right.
town council, committees, mayor,
Uh-huh.
last 16 as town manager. It was a big deal to me,
Yeah.
but it was a labor of love.
It's a big job.
It was
I mean,
I think the hardest job I ever had, and probably the dumbest thing ever done, was run for the Board of Supervisors and get elected and be chairman of the Board of Supervisors
right.
and town manager at the same time. Now, you talk about
Yeah.
that was
That'd be a double
one-term
whammy.
deal.
That'd be a
It was
double
not fun.
whammy.
That was
Yeah,
not
it'd
fun,
be,
but, I really had fun
yeah.
with the town.
Well, you done a lot of great things, brother.
Well,
You
thank
really
you.
did.
Thank you.
And when we talk about the Historical Society and the things that
Yeah.
you forerunnered so many things, and as far as the Historical Society, I mean, that's a big thing.
You know how many years it took me to get the depot?
Huh.
22 years.
Man.
And you know how I finally got it? Dr. Phil.
Huh.
Dr. Phil, do you remember when he came in on the train?
No, I don't remember
He came in
that.
on a Christmas train.
I don't remember that.
And, of course, as the, I guess I was manager at the time, was going to meet him on the train and give him the key to the city. He stopped down there at the depot, and, of course, it was, it was deplorable.
Right.
And the regional Norfolk Southern guy from Princeton happened to be on the train. And he looked at that, and I got on the train while Dr. Phil went into Clinch Valley Community Action. Me and the guy sat there, and I said, I've tried to get this thing for 20 years. And he said, boy, I'm going to help you. And he said, our president in Atlanta is going to be retiring in a couple of years, and he's big on these historic depots, so we got to strike now. And it took another 2 years because Roanoke balked on it because they didn't want to upset the southern states.
Okay.
But finally, they agreed to give it to the town. That is, it's not rented, the town owns it. And there were some stipulations of the fence and everything.
Right.
But then they told me, they said, the one thing you've got to do, we can't do, you've got to evict southern states. And I smiled. I said, the way they treat me, that's a pleasure to do. And I said, you've got 30 days to get
Right.
your stuff out of here. And,
Right.
and had the grant money lined up before I retired to renovate it.
Yeah.
I'm sad that I didn't get to do that, but I
Right.
did get it. And of course, there's probably not many people that even realize how long it took me. But
Don't remember that.
but that's all in the records.
The cool thing is being on the board for the fair, okay? Because I stay under the radar a lot with my life. I try to stay out of the way.
You do.
I mean, I've got 45 ministers here that I work with every week. Connie and I and the team work to girt them up. Millions of homes we're in every week, and we got stations in Texas, Chicago. There's a big thing. But anyway, being on this.
We got you in Knoxville.
Yeah, see, I mean, it's cool. I mean, but the thing about it, Jerry, I look at it, I think, going on the board, and I've got a good friend of mine that's very active in town. I've interviewed him several times and talked to him anyway. So I called him up the other day. I said, you know, the cool thing that I'm finding out is I don't know who's mad at who, and I don't know what clique or what group. So I just walk in like a howdy doody, you know, because I just walk in with a clean slate, and I talk to everybody like that. And I want to try, I said, because there's always groups, okay? I mean, there is. I mean, I can imagine you could write a book on that. You wouldn't want to publish it till you were dead, but.
You're right.
I think, but there's always groups.
Names have been changed to protect the innocent.
But I told her, I said, you know, I can walk in and I just talk to everybody just like we're friends and everybody likes everybody. And I'm not going to back out. I don't back out, and I don't have to at this point in my life. And I think you get to that point, and all I'm here is trying to help. And if I can help, fine. If I can't, I ease back out of the way a little bit and let somebody else. I try to look at life like that. And I think of what you've done was so solid when we talk about in town. And the thing, because people don't know, Tazewell to me has always been on an even keel. It never shoots up and never shoots down. Okay, it might fluctuate a little bit. Okay, but to me, it's always seems like it's been, and they got a lot of stuff going on here now. I mean, they really are.
Funny you say that. They say, you know how, and I used to say, well, we've never been so high up that if we fail, it doesn't hurt as much. You know, if we do fall, it's not from a high distance. So you put it in a different way, but that's true.
Yeah, they seem like too that, and there's, you know, people fuss about it, but a lot of times people fuss about stuff they don't know nothing about. But I mean, they'll say things and they don't know what's going on. You know, I had it with the fair out here to tell me, oh, you know, as I become part, I start talking to people about it. Well, I tell you what, it ain't. I said, listen, do you know that last year on a Friday night we had to turn cars away at 6 o'clock because we were so many people that there was no place to stand, no place to sit? I said, do you know that? Well, no. I said, do you know how many thousands of dollars it takes to put on a fair? You know, no. I said, you know that it costs $5,000 for this music group to come in, and we charge $2 at the gate. Where do you think that money comes from? They don't, you know. So a lot of times people, you know, I said, you know, you got to take a look. A lot of times, if you don't know what it really takes, and I said, if you're not part of the solution, sometimes you can sort of get geared up in a big talk about it, and, you know. And when I take a look at stuff, man, the town here does so many things now. They're doing some good stuff. A lot of stuff going on.
And you know, Don Dunford, we've lost, you know, several
kings. That's a king. Do we take people like Don Dunford, Jack Harry, Jim Ramey?
That's who I was going to mention. That's the three I was going to mention.
Those are kings.
I always, Scott Cole, you know, I tell somebody I had music every Friday and Saturday night. You can remember that.
Right.
And it didn't cost the town a penny.
Right.
I got out and raised it, but I had people like Jim Ramey. I had the two banks at the time,
right.
Ray Dotson and Rhodes Brown. And I'd go to Rhodes and he'd say, how much Ray going to give you? I'd go, Ray, how much? So I'd say, you know, let's, and you know, the Tazewell was always so supportive of me. So it wasn't me. I had the support. And, you know, Don Dunford, and bless his heart, I killed that, but he wanted to name this little stretch of road out to Pizza Hut and out through there. That was my baby right there, getting that done. And he wanted to name that little stretch of road the Jerrywood Highway or something. I said, I don't want anything named that. He even went to council, and one of them called and asked me about it. I said, no, I don't want my name on it.
Right.
I really don't.
I really, you know, I like Don. I mean, I think, and Jack Harry would do anything for me. That he just absolutely was so accommodating. And Jim Ramey, I met with him a bunch on stuff and talked to him, and just seemed like it. And I believe that we've lost kings. These are kings. If you take a look at them, think about this, Jerry. Think about this. How many people have put their kids in college that work for Ramey Chevrolet? The people, now every dollar, and I know you probably, every dollar, payroll dollars worth $7 to a community.
Exactly. Yep.
So when you think about the money,
Very true.
the money and the people that went to school, that have bought their houses, that worked at those jobs, those are kings that we had in this
Well,
land.
I bought my first car. Well, I told you I went off to Radford, worked a couple of years, saved my money, didn't spend a penny till I could buy a car. Bought a brand new '69 Camaro, and Jim Ramey did the deal. He was doing his own deals then, and he said, I'm going to give you a deal, but when you finish college, I want you to go back and finish college,
Yeah,
then come back and work for me. And to the time he died, he was still trying to hire me.
yeah,
And when he bought the Ford place out here, he came, was town manager then. And he came and I said, well, Jim, he said, well, I got a purpose for coming here. He said, he was 72. He said, I've just gone in debt $4 more million. He said, I bought the Ford place.
yeah.
I said, Jim, how you gonna get all the people to man it? He said, well, that's why I'm here. One more time, I'd like to hire you. I can teach you the car business so fast,
Yeah.
you can take over. I said, Jim, I don't want to be in the car business. I like my weekends.
Yeah,
But I love Jim Ramey.
I think about kings in our land, and I think about where those are coming from now. And I know they probably are that I don't know about. Okay, but I don't know. I think about those things. One thing I done with my children, I done this several years ago. I any property I had or anything I had, I divided it up and gave it to them. I said, because at this point in your mom and I's life, we're not going to leave you anything. We're going to spend all of our money. Okay, we're going to spend it. We're going to travel. We're going to spend it. We're going to enjoy it. I'm giving you so you don't have to worry about anything being left. If we owe money on the camper we got, y'all can decide if you want to pay it off. If one of you want it, I said, but we're going to do. House I live in, I gave to my son and my daughter-in-law. They cut the grass and take care of it. But at the point in my life, we sort of, I don't know, and I know we can say, well, that's you're not being ambitious. Well, you can take it however you want to, but I don't know. I want, to me, to sit down, to be able to have time and resources to sit down with you and record history. See, I believe this is history. Because I look back on the interview I did with my grandfather in 1992, when I sit down with my grandfather, John Dash.
I knew John Dash.
Sit down with him in a little studio in War, West Virginia that was 8 foot by 10 foot. And I had had 2x4s on the wall and material from the dollar store, and I went down and got graveyard flowers from the dollar store and stapled them to the wall, made a background. And me and him sit there in his work uniform and done interviews. History. So to me, the success of my life right now is to be able to sit down with people like you and talk about
Well, there
our
are
life.
several people that are pushing me to write a book because I've had so many, retired 4 times. Just taking a full-time job again. But, there's people that says, you need to write a book about your experiences and even about your football refereeing. I mean, that would,
Gee.
that.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll live long enough to write a book, but there's an attorney there in Bluefield, every time he sees me, he says, have you started that book yet?
Yeah. Do you remember Bob Smallwood? You know Bob Smallwood?
Yes.
Me and Bob and I have sat down and interviewed Bob a couple times so far. Okay, and
Is he still alive?
Yeah, Lord, yeah. And come through cancer, come through all kinds of stuff.
I know.
Just
I got out of touch when I moved to Knoxville.
He just is, sharp as a tack. Okay, we just sit down and talk about. But we talk about history and things that where he grew up at in his life, and I think about people like that I don't know, maybe nobody will care, but I swear I believe they will.
I called Bob Smallwood one time. I had one of my best friends I don't know if you ever knew him over in Grundy, superintendent of schools, Paul Hatfield.
No.
So Paul was turning 50 years old. And I called Bob Smallwood. How he wished people happy birthday.
Right.
And I told him, I said, now, Paul Hatfield's got a birthday coming up. And I said, he's 50. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to wish him happy 62nd birthday. Oh. So he made such a big deal. And Paul Hatfield called and he says, I don't know how you did it, but I know you or Bo Adair had something to do with that. So, yeah, I knew him. I didn't know if he's still alive or not.
Yeah,
but
boy, he's doing
he's
good.
had some trouble.
Yeah,
You know
and
what I
married
mean?
to a real nice woman, and just nice, and he just absolutely, he's my friend. Always been my friend. Bob has. I mean, he's my friend.
Well, whatever happened to Sister Sheila?
Sheila Stanley.
Stanley,
Yeah,
Bobby,
Bobby,
and
yeah,
Sister
they're doing
Sheila.
good. They
You
do.
know, she used to
Oh.
interview me a lot when I
She-
was mayor,
yeah,
and
absolutely. I've
when
got
went
it.
up at the mini park in.
I've
and-
got the interviews.
Oh, really? I'd
got
love
them.
to see
yeah,
those
I've got
sometime.
them archived. I've got them archived.
I'd love
I've
to
got-
see it.
On the road again. We done those.
On the road again.
Yeah,
Yep.
I got him. Sheila works down there for WLFG for Mike now. Mike
Abingdon?
Smith. Uh-huh.
Okay.
She's been working with him for years now.
Okay. I just wonder if they were.
Her and Bobby doing good, and
See,
Lord-
Bobby was from over in the county.
Oh yeah. Bobby is the county. Okay, I mean you can't cut him and make him and Sheila. I've tried to get them in for an interview. I've tried to get some things in, and I told them I need to admit a lot of stuff while they're still alive. And I kid them a lot, but Lord, I've known.
I didn't know if they were still alive. Or not.
Yeah, boy, doing good.
Good, that's
and,
great.
Bobby's tough as nails.
She interviewed me, 30 years ago?
Yeah, I've got interviews. I've got interviews. Remember the Justice Twins at War?
Yeah.
I've got interviews with them. I've archived this history, and I've got a lot of stuff that's back on there that I've archived.
You're putting this stuff on YouTube?
Yeah. I've got a YouTube called Just for John Dash and Friends. If you look on YouTube, John Dash and Friends, and I've got stuff on there I'll try to send you a link on some
Okay,
of
because
that stuff.
does Dish Network, I mean, get your in Bluefield? 'Cause
Roku.
Okay.
Do you have Roku?
That's all I watch.
See, Roku. Look for Dash TV on Roku. I had 7 channels on Roku at one point.
See, that's my, Dr. Payne. He can use Dish, but he can't.
I'm gonna give you that to take with you.
He
but
can't do
anyway.
much of the streaming or anything.
The
But
streaming is where.
but now I've got my own TV there, and that's all I do is Roku and watch
and
basically
if
sports
you-
and gardening channels.
If you go to dashtv.net, we get millions of people that go to the whole thing on. I mean, we just made a focus on this area and started really focusing on the streaming part of it, and because I knew that's where the future was and where we were all heading.
Oh,
at.
of course.
And Roku.
So someday I'll
streaming.
get to watch this on.
Yeah, I guarantee you will. Yeah, I'll send you the link. And see, and I'm going to admit this, okay? I have got 19 Facebooks, okay? I'm a little bit of Facebook floozy.
I got one.
Okay, but the reason why
You
is
never get on it.
every time I started a business, I built a Facebook for it.
Okay.
So in the end, after I started dialing back on different businesses, I had all these Facebooks, okay? So I started repurposing those. And I've got one just called John Dash and Friends where I put the full interviews up. And what I've shared with you, we use AI for so much editing and stuff now and our graphics. And it just is, if you don't embrace it, I kid my wife, okay? I was kidding her yesterday. She's getting ready we have a big shindig on 4th of July at the house. So the other day she was working on her grocery list. So I just took a picture of it, converted it to PDF, dropped it over in ChatGPT, and it laid out, started giving, recipes for this and laid it out. And I said, now we're going to shop at Food Line. Tell us how we need to do this. So it laid it out every aisle, okay, to go in. Starting from dairy, laid it out, back over to frozen, laid it out. Just laid it out, and of course she got mad as a hornet when I did that. She said, "I don't need nothing to tell me where it is." I said.
Yeah.
So I told her, I said, "Now she's shopping today, getting everything ready for the 4th." And I said, "Well, give me your list. I am not going to give you my list." She said, "I'm not going to give it to you." I said, "So," but anyway, we argue. All right.
If you do have me back, I will. I'll tell you a story about the earring, and it's
Okay.
tied into Big Creek High School. I was 56 years old when I got the earring, but I used it to go back to Big Creek High School before it closed. I used this in a presentation I made there. So
Man,
I'll
tell you
about that sometime.
I'm going to let you go, but I want you to come back because there's so much that we haven't even tapped into, and I want us to share some things. I think people need to hear about it and need to learn about it, and I think
I love it.
you can do that.
It may be the starting of my book. You may remind me of some things, and I'll sit and watch this and write.
Yeah.
Right.
Brother, appreciate you.
All right. Thank you for
bud.
having me. Sorry it took me so long.
Don't you worry.
I was all set to come.